Spring weather is in the air. Spring football can't be too far behind in Columbus. Welcome into the Voice of College Football. We appreciate you stopping by for the best in discussion, debate, and analysis on Ohio State football right here. So it's another Wednesday edition, 4 p.m. Eastern time. Used to be in the morning, now 4 p.m. Eastern time. Steve Hellwagon right next to me, Bucknuts 247 Sports. And, of course, we are presented by FanDuel. Consider that Steve, Tony, Kevin, these guys show up and deliver all the time, each and every week, 360 consecutive shows. The Super Chat's available there. Leave those comments and questions as well. Steve, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, Mark. We're just hanging in. I don't know. We got spring practice starting next Tuesday, so 6 days from now. And, yeah, just get ready for all of that.
How are you going to handle spring practice and the Big Ten tournament at the same time?
Well, I'm actually going to go to the first practice on Tuesday, and as things stand right now, I'm going to fly out to Chicago on Wednesday afternoon, so I would miss the second practice probably on Thursday by going to the basketball tournament. So I may have to amend my flight because they may be playing on Wednesday, but otherwise, yeah, I'll just be at the first practice, and then after that, probably bugging out to go to the basketball. So, yep, that was our friend Comrade Noon. There he is.
Yeah. Here I am
on this.
There he is.
There we go. It only takes about 14 tries with the StreamYard camera settings to get it straight. Kevin, how you doing?
Doing okay. Thanks for having me.
Everybody, Kevin Noon, BuckeyeHuddle.com, the Big Me podcast. Should we ask about a schedule for the Big Me podcast?
Hey, I remembered we were doing this show like 3 minutes ago. That's about the best I can do at this point. But
all right. Well,
yeah,
we're probably not
I'm
talking
thinking that once spring ball starts here, coming up here, and whatever it is, a week or something like that, I'll have stuff to talk about as opposed to, didn't get to cover the combine this year, so kind of feel all out of whack.
All right. If we get to depth charts here in the next 5 minutes, we'll let you know in about 2 minutes.
Okay.
If the schedule seems to be changing like every 3 minutes. All right. Very good. Comments and questions are welcome, everyone. Kevin's here. Steve's here. Let's talk Buckeyes football. It's basically ancient history. I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on it because at least our viewers here, both on the Buckeyes channel and throughout our college football network here, don't seem to care about these guys once they leave the campus. But and the combine seems like it was about 12 weeks ago, even though it was more like 48 hours. But any lingering thoughts from the combine, Steve?
Yeah, I was there, covered the interviews, and watched a lot of the workouts. And obviously, the night that Sonny Styles and Arvell Reese ran, it was electric. Talking about those two guys in the 2:45 range, each running 4.46 40s, identical times, somehow coincidentally. And I think that obviously that helps solidify them as first half of the first round type prospects. And Styles, a 43-inch vertical jump and 11-foot broad jump. I think he is quite a physical specimen. And 3 years of film as a starter for Ohio State, 1 year as a safety, 2 years as a linebacker. And I think he's about as sure a thing as you'd have. I think Caleb Downs, obviously, he did not work out, but I think his body of work, as I was writing up his vignette for the combine, every game he played as a college player, 1 year at Alabama, 2 years at Ohio State, he was a starter. He was an All-American twice, Jim Thorpe Award winner, and obviously his team was in the playoffs all 3 years. So I think you look at it, he's about as no risk a pick, I think, as is out there. Carnell Tate, he was just over the 4.5 mark for a receiver in the 200-pound range. You'd think, maybe he could have done better than that, but he has been tremendous, obviously, last 2 years as a starter for the Buckeyes. So those 4 guys all seem like they're going to go in the first 15 picks, which is going to be really impressive. And the draft is being held in Pittsburgh. So a lot of Ohio State people may be going over there to celebrate the Buckeyes, and we'll see if the Ohio State players attend the draft or are going to watch it at home and have their own party or whatever. But should be a really big night for the Buckeyes and those guys individually.
Yeah, there are a lot of people that are all up in arms about Carnell Tate's time, but the words come out afterwards that teams did time him in the high 4.4s, and they're not concerned. I mean, some people want to sit there and drop him or whatever, but you look at a guy that came in at 6'2" and change. I mean, maybe he was a tick under 6'3" with what he'd been listed at Ohio State, but still with a huge wingspan and everything else. I mean, plays a lot bigger than he is, and you just have to watch his tape. And then the other controversy out there is that people are trying to start rumors about Caleb Downs' knee not being 100% and so on and so forth. And so now we're already into the silly season of the draft, having to address rumors and everything else. According to people I've talked to around the league, have not heard anything that leads me to believe that there's any validity to any of that type of stuff. But, I think every year we hear, some misinformation, planted about some player or another player, whether or not it's a team trying to hopefully get a player to slide down to them or whatever it is. Somebody out there just trying to get clicks. I don't know.
So I am no scout, so I can't say, oh, that guy ran a 4.44 and that guy ran a 4.48. And I could tell just by watching the two guys run. But I have watched a lot of football and watched guys run to a certain extent. And before the time popped up on Lorenzo Styles' run, just to watch him run was one of the most, this is a stupid oxymoron, most athletic runs of a 40-yard dash, one of the most fluid athletic performances I've seen in the combine. It just looked like he just glided. It was remarkable.
Yeah, it was a thing of beauty out there. And look, we understand that the game of football is not a game of straight lines generally, but just, it shows, explosion and things like that. That's why they do the drills that they do. And it was, when they did the simulcast where they put him and his brother both up there and, both putting up incredible times, but Lorenzo Styles Jr., his time, going sub 4.3, there are not a lot of people who walk the face of the earth that can do those types of things. So when you see somebody who can do it, you just have to kind of stop and marvel and just think about the athleticism that resides in that Styles family.
For sure.
Yeah, I mean, to have two brothers who had the fastest time in their position group. Not sure if that's ever happened before. If it did, it was many years ago. They put up so many stats and different things during the combine. It's hard to internalize all of it, but it's almost unprecedented what the two brothers did. And that Lorenzo Styles ran the fastest 40 time any Ohio State players ever had there is also somewhat remarkable. But obviously there's not a lot of people who go underneath 4.4. I mean, that's elite if you're under 4.4, obviously. So to be under 4.3, that's just crazy stuff. I don't even know what to say about that, but congratulations to him. No doubt, well earned. And, we'll see, I think that will really help him get drafted probably, as a later round pick. So he went from undrafted free agent to probably getting drafted. So I think that was huge for him.
Yeah, every 5'10" and a half 5'10" and a half guy says they're 6 feet tall. There are a lot of people out there that say that they're 4'4", who were not sniffing 4'4" in any way, shape, or form. But when you can break 4'3", that's just next level. And that's not 4'3" with an itchy thumb on a stopwatch. I mean, that's we're talking laser timing and everything else, and that's pretty impressive once you get to the the official time, not the initial time that they put up on the screen. But either way, to Mark's point, it was fast.
Tony Gerdeman, BuckeyeHuddle.com, the Buckeye Weekly podcast, and fashionably late. Tony, how you doing?
Doing well, and I'll just throw in on Lorenzo Styles. When he was on the field, the Buckeyes were better, and when he wasn't, they were worse. And so I think that's another check in his box for something down the road. And again, 3 years of playing DB in college, and so he's only going to get better from here.
Again, a remarkable athletic feat just to watch athletes run around. And again, Kevin outlined how it doesn't necessarily mirror the football, but there's a metric out there, a collection of metrics, and I'm guessing one of you guys are going to be able to help me out on this, because we were going through this with the Iowa players on the Iowa show yesterday, where they look at height, weight, 40 time, bench press, number of cone drills, the 10, the 20 sprints, and then they collect it all together, and then they compare that particular player against his position group going back to 1987 and give him a ranking athletically. And then there's different color coding, like yellow's neutral, green means he's elite, red means that's a concern. And we were looking at Xavier Wampa of Iowa, and he had a top 200 grade out of like 2,500 safeties going back to 1987. Now, I would assume that these guys are testing much better because, number one, they're probably just sheer better athletes now. But number two, they also know how to test and they prepare for it much better. In 1987, I'm guessing they just found out they were going to the combine, and so they lifted a few more weights getting ready for it. And that was about it. So I'm guessing they're testing better, but still, Wampa ran a 4.48 at safety. And so I'm anxious to look at Styles' rundown, considering his vertical and that 40 time, how he grades against his position group historically, because it's got to be elite of the elite.
Yeah, back in 87 or so, one of the things you had to do when you're leading up to the combine was stop smoking. Like they frowned upon that back then. Like, hey, you're going to be running around. Let's give up the cigarettes for a couple of weeks before the combine. Now it's much more, as you said, much more scientific and much more planned for and prepared for. And honestly, from like the high school camps and then the combine, the only time a lot of these guys are running 40s is preparing for those things, because they don't really run the 40s necessarily anymore, because it's all miles per hour on the GPS is how they maintain or how they judge speed at a lot of the college places.
Yeah, they have this thing called the RAS, the relative athletic score, and
That's it.
Yeah, I knew exactly what you were talking about. I'm like, SAS. I'm like, no, that's Special Air Services. I'm reading too many spy novels, but yeah, the RAS, and yeah, Sonny Styles put up the elusive 10.0, which you don't do with the RAS out there. So it was and it was an incredible one for the ages. And of course, here I go being the downer of the group. I mean, I read this on the Buckeye Huddle message board. With this amount of talent on this type of team, you mean to tell me that they couldn't win a national championship this year around or whatever? I'm like,
that was a recurring.
None of them could run the ball for them down the stretch when they couldn't run the ball worth a lick against Indiana or Miami.
That was the recurring theme all last week. Is this combine is depressing me. So these poor people can't even enjoy the bleeping combine. So
yeah, I got to see that ran through my mind a few times.
One of the show series that we're planning on doing for the Buckeye Weekly this summer during the Dole days is like looking back at the last 10 or 15 seasons and exactly how the Buckeyes lost the national championship each season, because nobody ever wins it. It's Ohio State always loses it. And so just going back each season and seeing where did these blankety blanks screw up on the way to destiny? And this is another situation of those. Sometimes the other team gets lucky. What is it? Does Miami practice more fumbling the ball back to yourself? Is that why Malachi Tony was able to do that twice against Ohio State? Do they practice that more than Ohio State, or is that just complete dumb luck? Stuff like that. Sometimes you meet a team that has you that day, and it doesn't. Not everything has to, be a judgment or a requiem on whatever. It's like shit happens, man.
Well, I mean, if you practice the Jack Sawyer scoop and score like happened against Texas the previous season, I mean, good things happen there. I mean, obviously Ohio State did not practice the dribbling the ball to yourself type of situation, and it bit them in the end. I mean, you got to have a defense for that, don't you?
Well, and back in 2020 or 2019, they one of the games J.K. Dobbins like dribbled the ball right back to himself. So they must have practiced it that year, but they haven't. Nobody's done it better than Miami, I guess.
Well, Kevin Wilson took that with him or something. I don't know.
I'm already starting my list, Tony. I'm blaming the rain in 2015, or maybe just attitude or lack of motivation. I'm blaming the NCAA in 2011 and 12. I'm blaming the officials.
Let me stop you right there, Mark. You can blame Gene Smith for 2012.
Okay.
And you can blame the rain for 2003. That Wisconsin loss, there was rain there. And as soon as I saw that rain, I knew the game was over. I knew it was going to be tough because Ohio State could not run the ball that year. But yeah, like every year, it's just the only year that wasn't the case was 2011. That was the NCAA, and maybe 2004, I guess, because that was just a depleted roster after the bunch of players left, and they were left with two quarterbacks that weren't ready yet. But other than that,
I'm with you. I am with you. If Michigan can do it, then we can do it. All right, folks, we appreciate you being here. We'll take the comments, questions. In the meantime, I know Steve was hard at work at a two-deep roster headed into spring.
I just sat down and penciled it out. I don't know if Tony ever did one on his site, but I just sat here and kind of penciled one out. And I'm sure that Tony will debunk me at some of these positions and say, "Oh no, that's not right." But we can try and whip through that here in the time that we have left. And was there something else we were going to talk about today? I don't remember, but I guess if
take over, Steve. I want to hear this too deep.
Well, okay. Well, I'll start with quarterback, and then maybe we can rotate the positions or whatever. But quarterback, it's pretty obvious. It's Julian Sayin, and if they don't play Tavian St. Clair after Julian Sayin, then they need their heads examined, because it seems entirely likely that Julian Sayin will go to the NFL after the upcoming season. And then Tavian St. Clair would be the only quarterback returning. Justin Martin is a transfer from Maryland, but I think he's just a stopgap. He's played one game or started one game or played one game in his career. It was at Penn State. They lost the game, Maryland did. But, I think that's pretty clear when you've got a Heisman finalist back as your quarterback. That seems like a pretty easy thing to say. So if there's no objections, we'll enter that into the transcript, I guess.
Nope.
Well, if somebody gets nicked up, meaning Julian Sayin, it'll be interesting if they go to a Justin Martin who started the one game, UCLA, Penn State, or, they go the veteran route, or they see enough out of Tavian St. Clair throughout spring and summer to say, no, we'll put the other kid in because he's been around campus now for a year and a half, and we can insert him and trust him.
Yeah, it's a big year for St. Clair because he was getting third team reps last year when they had Holtz, and now, he's getting second team reps, and he's got he's got to really improve. I think he's got to make a big leap this year to get ready for next year. So that's what I see with him. I don't know if you guys have any other comment about that, but
well, I think it'll be interesting because he goes from the scout team basically last year to now he's going to be rotating in with the 1s and 2s in spring.
yeah,
And so he's at least used to playing against the first team defense because he did it on the scout team, but now he'll get to show a little bit of what he can do with Ohio State's split offensive line that they do, which doesn't necessarily help either of the quarterbacks out, doesn't necessarily maximize anything, but yeah, it's big to go from scout team to one play away from being the starter.
yep. Running back's interesting. Bo Jackson and Isaiah West both had shoulder surgery after the season. Neither of them will be on the field taking full contact reps this spring. Jacoby Jackson is coming in as a transfer from Florida. It sounds like he's going to get a lot of work, as well as the freshman Favor Aki and Legend Bay may line up at running back as well. So I guess we'll see those guys, battling it out. And then when Jackson and West are put back in there, I think it's Bo Jackson's job in the fall. But he, this really kind of hurts him that he's not in spring ball to improve, but seems like it's his job.
I mean, you get so many hits a year or whatever. So, in some ways, it's not the worst thing in the world that they're not necessarily. I mean, I think that it would mean more for an Isaiah West to get out there to get more of a productive spring, but, it wasn't meant to be. So, what do you see out of the kids? What do you see out of Jacoby Jackson? I think that's all pretty fair and safe to say, but it seems like it's going to feel very sparse in the spring when you don't have names like a Chip Trainum or a Quinshon Judkins or even a CJ Donaldson out there, mixing it up in terms of splitting the carries. So.
Yeah, Turbo Rogers.
And then
Turbo Rogers.
Turbo Rogers was the other. Yeah, I was sitting here going through the names. I'm like, I'm forgetting somebody that wasn't in there, but it could be a good opportunity for Turbo Rogers to show some things. But you at this point too, you need to maintain your health, and it's going to be a physical spring because hell, I'm going to need a roster this off season because there's just so much turnover due to graduation and portal in, portal out, everything else. This is probably the biggest year for me in terms of I'm going to have to really kind of study here for a change.
Well, and these 4 running backs that they'll have, 4 healthy scholarship running backs, we've only seen a little bit of Turbo Rogers last year in fall camp. We never saw him play. And so this will be like everything we see from these 4 guys will be new information. And I know there's a ton of excitement around Legend Bay based on his high school film as a quarterback, but it'll be interesting to see how quickly he adjusts to life as a running back or however they choose to use him.
I'm guessing Turbo Rogers is not going to disappoint me as much as Turbo Tax did this week when they couldn't find my 2024 tax return.
Oof. That sucks.
Well, I bet Turbo Rogers couldn't find it either, so I don't know what your problem is.
Yeah.
Did you ask? Turbo Rogers, that is.
I did.
You went to the wrong Turbo. Turbo Rogers actually has
it.
Right.
He's got it. Oh, yes, absolutely. He'll deliver it on time.
Yeah.
Steve, what do we got next?
Wide receiver. I'll just list 3 guys who I think will start. Jeremiah Smith and Brandon Ennis, certainly. I think the 3rd spot, you kind of bracket Kyle Parker, the guy that the new wide receivers coach Cortez Hankton is bringing with him from LSU, and the freshman Chris Henry Jr. Devin McCune is also a transfer from Texas San Antonio. I think that's your first 5 right there in any particular order. Then you have Phillip Bell, Dazee Jones. They stuck around. Jerquaden Guilford is a promising true freshman as well. So you've got 8 names there for 3 spots, and I'm open to suggestion. I think it's got to be, I don't think Jeremiah Smith is going to be put in harm's way, this spring. I mean, he may ask to do some full contact reps just to stay sharp, but I can't imagine he's going to be in there when they're tackling people to the ground. That makes no sense. You can't win the national championship in the spring, but you can certainly lose it in the spring if Jeremiah Smith goes down with some type of season-ending injury. You would not want that, obviously, but that's my thought on it. I just think, first of all, Cortez Hankton has faith and confidence in Kyle Parker, the guy he chose to bring along with him from LSU. And secondly, Chris Henry Jr. played in 3 high schools in 4 years, and I can't find anywhere in his bio where he put up, I guess maybe as a freshman or sophomore in Cincinnati, he put up some good numbers, but like 25 catches last year, dinged up as a junior, dinged up as a senior, caps and sleeves at this level. I mean, this is the Big Ten Conference. You don't just show up after not doing anything in high school. I guess Travion Henderson or no, J.K. Dobbins may be the exception to that he missed like his whole senior year, I think. But there's only been one guy out of all these great receivers that the great Brian Hartline brought in. I'm screwing around, but over the last few years who had an impact as a freshman, and that was Jeremiah Smith. I mean, Olave by the end of the year was pretty good, and Harrison, when they finally used him there in the Rose Bowl, was pretty good. But to me, it's difficult for a freshman to make a move. But I'll listen to whatever you guys think about that.
Let's not forget that at Mater Dei, where Chris Henry Jr. was, he was also in the same receiver corps as KDW with Caden Dixon-Wyatt. And yeah, he was banged up. And you at Mater Dei, you're going against some of the best competition in the nation. So I'm not trying to make an excuse for maybe a lack of production. Certainly I think injury is a valid excuse, but I mean he was not you mentioned Trevion Henderson, obviously different position out in Hopewell, Virginia. I mean, it was him and just a bunch of farm kids. It's a lot easier to shine in that type of situation. I really like Devin McCune, and I say that because I played college fantasy football and I had McCune on my team, so I watched him more than probably anybody not in the McCune family, or at least as a UTSA Roadrunner fan. I watched a good amount of him, and he's somebody who has, to use one of my old sayings or whatever, has been to the fair and seen the bear, and he's got experience. And I think that moving into another system, you're not going to have to teach him the finer points of how to be a wide receiver. You're going to have to sit there and teach him the Ryan Day offense. You're going to have to teach him the Arthur Smith offense, but you're not going to have to teach him, okay, this is a post, this is a skinny post, he's going to know those types of things. So while Cortez Hankton did bring Kyle Parker along with him, I think that McCune is somebody that really has the opportunity to be impactful. I mean, is he going to be somebody that, as Mark put up the numbers, is he going to go for 65 receptions, 726 yards, 8 touchdowns this year? Well, it wouldn't be a bad thing for Ohio State's purposes if he's able to do that. But you sit there and you see a guy that has 16 career touchdowns at this point. He's found the end zone in the past. I think he's going to find the end zone here in his near future.
Yeah, already hearing good things about him. But I mean, that junior season he had right there is pretty similar to Carnell Tate's junior season as well. And if they could get that from him, they'd take it. They probably want more than the 11.2 yards per catch, which maybe with the defense focused on the running game and Jeremiah Smith, they would be able to get out of him at that Z spot. So yeah, I think him and I think Kyle Parker will float back and forth between slot and Z, but then you also have Jeremiah Smith moving all around. I'm just wondering if what we're all expecting is a 4-man rotation with the 4 that we've talked about. Can it grow into 5 or 6 with either, the redshirt freshman, somebody there, Phillip Bell jumping in there, or if it's, Chris Henry, they're certainly paying a lot of money, so they'd like to get a return on that as quickly as possible. And the springtime is when you can shove him out there. You can't shove him out there in September. So maybe you see what you can get as much out of him. And wouldn't be shocked, as Steve kind of alluded to it before, in terms of you don't need to see anything from Jeremiah Smith this year. Last year we saw a lot of Caleb Downs and Sonny Styles coaching in the spring. Wouldn't be shocked if we're going to see Coach Smith out there, Jeremiah, doing more sideline stuff on the other side of the sideline rather than keeping his toes on the green side. So I think I like Jaquaden Guilford. I'm fascinated to see what Brock Boyd can do. I mean, he lit up Texas football, and that means something to me. So, in big time Texas football, I always want to see. They have all these phenoms every year at receiver, but not every year does somebody just light it up like immediately. We get to see the first practice and maybe sometimes the second practice of spring, and somebody does stuff that is legit, and you know right away, like, okay, this guy can play. Like Garrett Wilson, Jackson Smith and Jigba, and Jeremiah all did that. And let's see if any of these guys can do that same thing.
Yeah, I'm going to add on
McCune. Like Corian Washington.
All spring.
He saved his best for the spring game.
Yes.
Yeah, all spring game team. I'm going to add on McCune. When I watched his highlights on ESPN from different games with San Antonio, he is a great technician underneath. He is a great ball catcher and route runner on the intermediate route, and he has the speed to get behind the defense on occasion to catch the deep ball. So they had touchdown catches by him on all three levels. Impressive to me. My dogs may be barking, but I'm going to just keep right on rolling. Tight end, Bennett Christian and Nate Roberts, two of the big returnees, along with Brody Lennon and Max LeBlanc. So you got four guys coming back, but it looks like it's Bennett Christian's job. And you're bringing in Hunter Welsing from Northwestern. I'll mute this. Go ahead.
I'll let you go on this one, Tony. My Hunter Welsing notes are pretty short.
No, well, and Mason Williams from Ohio, both of those guys had over 20 catches last year. So like right away you expect them to play. Bennett Christian will be leading them in the spring. That's just how, he's his fifth year or whatever. I can't remember if it's fourth or fifth year. I always get him missed on his years, but he's the elder statesman in the room, even though Hunter Welsing is a seventh year guy. But Welsing saved his performance for basically 1 year last year at Northwestern on the field. So, the veterans at OSU will always lead the transfers until the transfers get their footing. And, Nate Roberts, we didn't even talk about fullback, Steve, but he's the starting fullback, and maybe he's more than that. I really like his potential, and it'll be good to see what Brody Lennon can do. I'm somebody who has put on more size as he came in kind of as a pass catching receiver and has to obviously our pass catching tight end, then has to bulk up to be able to be a blocking tight end as well. So they lose two NFL tight ends, and did they replace him with two NFL tight ends? We'll see.
Exactly.
I don't think they'll be as good as last year, but maybe that means more 11 instead of 12 personnel.
That's where I was going to insert
13
my
and 14 personnel.
2020. What was that?
So 13 and 14 personnel. They better have the lot of them ready because, I know that Ohio State fans just have such fond memories of seeing 3 and 4 tight ends out there and points where you didn't have Jeremiah and Carnell out there at the same point, and just the wailing and the gnashing of the teeth and the why going on. I mean, I could hear it from whatever press box I was sitting in. I could hear it from the stands, and I could hear it from the living rooms of so many fans.
Tony, you beat me to it because when I heard that tight end room versus what it was last year, I was going to insert my 2025 running back room evaluation before I saw really any of those guys play besides C.J. Donaldson to say there's no way this room's going to be as good as it was last year.
Yeah, that's probably safe to say. And Christian is a graduate and he has 1 year left. I don't know if this means he's in his fourth or fifth year, whatever it is, but he's a veteran. And Nate Roberts got some invaluable playing time last year, as Tony said, in the backfield and some H-back and some at tight end, but Lennon and LeBlanc have hardly played, so they're going to get a baptism, I think, this spring, and probably put those guys in there and see what they can do. Let's see. The offensive line, you have 4 starters coming back, and the question is what you're going to do with Philip Daniels, who was the right tackle. Tegra Shabola, who was the right guard, has transferred out. They threw a parade for him as he transferred out to Kentucky, it appears. So you've got Austin Searveld at left tackle, Luke Montgomery left guard, Carson Hinsman at center, and then Daniels could slide in to replace Shabola at right guard, or he could stay at right tackle. And I think that comes down to how does this team look? Do you look better with Padilla or Gabe Van Sickle at right guard and Daniels at right tackle, or do you look better with Daniels at right guard and Ian Moore at right tackle? Ian Moore filled in the bowl game, and once and Searveld had to come out because he was injured, I guess, in the game against Miami, and Moore went in and things were generally okay. I mean, it just neither of those last 2 games are ones that they really ever need to go back and review the tape of. That's how bad they were. But at any rate, I'm open to suggestion on all of that. I know that Padilla is going to play a lot of football. Ian Moore is going to play a lot of football. It feels like Gabe Van Sickle will play a lot of football. And then you kind of have a drop-off because Lowe did not get to play much last year as a freshman. Cook, the kid from Westerville North, is in the mix, and you got a freshman, Sam Greer, who I think is in here. They really didn't get into the portal. They brought in Vashawn Washington from Dartmouth, and I don't know anything about him. So they really didn't get into the portal to help the offensive line. I'm open to suggestion, guys, but I think we know for a fact that the left side and the center are locked in place, and the other 2 spots are up in the air.
Kevin.
I mean, yeah. I mean, we kind of know who the guys are going to be. To Steve's point, it's what is the right side of the line going to look like in terms of where is Philip Daniels going to be? I mean, who do you feel is going to give you round out to be your best 5? Is it going to be Philip Daniels at tackle, and do you put in like a Padilla or somebody like that, or and I just want to have some breaking news. Condolences. The great Lou Holtz has passed away. Definitely have some memories of Lou Holtz, and very sad. Just saw that cross the wire while we're talking. Not to get sidetracked, but yeah, I think we know who the guys are, but I wonder, who's 6 through 10 at that point. I mean, because it's hard to be able to maintain 1 through 5. I mean, we certainly have seen some jumping around and things there. And, I think Ohio State's offensive line had its moments where it was pretty good last year and had its moments where it had its moments last year. But, I think that they really felt that they had something in Ethan Onwenu, which didn't necessarily work out. And maybe they saved a little bit of money this year on the offensive line, only going out and getting the Dartmouth kid, who certainly is a depth player, but who's going to be out there, and by love, are they going to be able to run block?
I think the other thing to expect this spring is that you're going to see everybody everywhere. It wouldn't shock me on Tuesday when we're out there for that first day, assuming we'll be out there, if Ian Moore is at left tackle and Austin Searveld's at right tackle, just because they're doing stuff like that. And that's what the spring is for, is just moving a bunch of guys around. I do think it'll be those 2 starting at tackle, just whichever tackle spot ends up being, we'll see. And then, Ryan Day mentioned it on his radio show a month ago that Philip Daniels was in that right guard battle. So I think whether he wins it or not, a lot of it's just going to be determined by, does he want to play guard or does he view himself as a tackle? And if he's open to it, I think it's going to be a good fit. And then you've got some talented guys vying for that spot. So I expect the offensive line to be better than it was last year. You've got, I think I wrote about it yesterday, 88 starts returning in that room, including Gabe Van Sickle and Ian Moore each got a start last year. And And now Gabe Van Sickle came against Miami, and he didn't last long. And then Josh Padilla came in and played like 50 snaps against Miami. So that's as good of a start as you get for a Padilla as well. So they've got guys that are experienced, and the backups are experienced as well. And then, as Steve said, can Carter Lowe, can Sam Greer, one of those guys, or Deontay Armstrong emerge as that third tackle in that group to provide some backup. And so I think overall it's a good group, and it's only going to get better, and it's experienced, which is half the battle.
I think that covers the offense. We got about 15 minutes. I think we can spend 5 minutes on each position group and get through this. But defensive line, Kenyatta Jackson looked at the NFL and came back. He's at defensive end, and Edric Houston split the starts last year with Tywan Malone at defensive tackle. Obviously, you lost Caden McDonald, who's I think is going to be a first-round pick, and Caden Curry, who's probably going to be a middle-round pick, I would think, at defensive end. You went into the portal, and you brought in a defensive tackle, James Smith from Alabama, and John Walker from Central Florida. And I don't know how you pronounce this guy's first name. Q-U-A. Is it Quay or Quay? Quay Russaw from Alabama. And Smith and Russaw, it sounds like I did a story yesterday about Smith in our top 20 players. He and Russaw are like joined at the hip. Like Russaw entered the transfer portal, and James Smith entered the transfer portal the very next day. I mean, that'll just tell you these guys are tighter than the bark on the tree, apparently. So as far as who's going to start, I would think Kenyatta Jackson, then James Smith or John Walker at one defensive tackle position, Edric Houston at the other, with Will Smith and Jason Moore kind of there waiting in the wings to compete for playing time, and then Quay Russaw, Zion Grady, and I believe Bo Atkinson is coming back, although he was the lightly used Bo Atkinson after coming in from North Carolina. He didn't play much at all for Ohio State last season, but it seems like he's back. And I mean, this one, just this whole group got decimated by the portal. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 out of about 15 or 16 guys went into the portal. They do have Epi Satanale. He'll be back this year as a sophomore. And I think he factors in at defensive end as well. I'm interested to hear what you guys think. And again, what do we even really know about Smith and Walker and Russaw? I mean, we really don't know much at all about him.
Yeah, is Russaw Sam? I mean, is he? I mean, what? I mean, where does he fit into the mix? I mean, I don't even know as much there, but Steve, hit the nail right on the head about there's not a position that Ohio State had more turnover than defensive line. That's one where you're going to have to really kind of see what's there. If you would have told me that Will Smith is kind of a co-starter at nose, it's a great story, and he's a great kid, and he really kind of came on as the year went on. But if you would have told me 2 years ago that we would be sitting here going into the 26th season and that he would be a co-starter, I'm not sure that I would have been buying on that point. So it'll be interesting. And then just Kari Wilder is somebody that I think as a true freshman, I'm really interested in seeing what he's capable of doing. I know that overhype true freshman at your own peril, but he's somebody I think that he's a guy that I think that has the capability. And we know that the black stripe is a motivational tool, not a checklist. There's not you have to sit there and do 50 push-ups and chug a beer and do all this stuff to lose your black stripe or whatever. It's a motivational thing, but he's the type of guy that I think that could maybe have a big spring and be that type of guy. But we'll see.
I will say, I think of the last 8 or 10 freshmen to lose their black stripes in spring, half of them have transferred out eventually. So I don't know that you want that to happen, Kevin. But Quincy Porter was the only guy last year to do it in terms of true freshmen. But the way I see it, I think they have to have John Walker replace Cade McDonald because he's 6'4", 324 pounds. He's big. I think it's going to be fascinating to see how James Smith and Edric Houston operate because I see them both as three techs, and they can both be in there for 25, 35 snaps a game. And we're hearing really good things about Smith in the offseason workouts. So like I feel like they've got four pretty good tackles, and Will Smith being the fourth there. And yeah, they lost all three of their 2025 signees. Defensive end, talked with Epi Satanale at the Cotton Bowl. He's added like 35 pounds from last year, which he needed to do. And I like what they've got there, but I'm most interested to see if Kenyatta Jackson stays where he was last year as that strong side defensive end, or if he moves to the weak side to do what Caden Curry did last year, which is kind of just free rush and things like that. So he can just deal with a tackle rather than a tackle and a guard at times like Kenyatta Jackson had to do. But Kenyatta did it very well last year. I just wonder if part of his agreeing to come back is to be like, I'd like to do what Caden Curry got to do last year because that's where more of the numbers are.
Jason Moore to me is a guy. I mean, he was the number 75 player in the country, number 10 interior defensive lineman in the 2023 class coming out of DeMatha Catholic in Hyattsville, Maryland. And he, I think, has had some injury issues and has not played much football. And it's kind of like the moving sidewalk is ending. Please look down, because I think, it's kind of a now or never situation, I would say, for Jason Moore. So I look at it that Larry Johnson looked at this group of defensive linemen, looked at his allotment of dollars and had, people hitting him up for raises who've never done anything and just said, nope, there's the door. Nope. Get your stuff and go. Because I mean, it was wholesale. He weeded them out, no doubt about it. I mean, I don't see much. They didn't lose any production up there, as far as I could tell, out of the guys. The 9 guys who transferred out, probably in one hand count the number of tackles or sacks that they made. So long to those people. So long to those fine people. But
and one quick note on Jason Moore, talked with Larry Johnson about him and just the idea that Taiwan Malone, how it took him until his last year to become something. That's an example that they can use for Jason Moore and others who just take longer. And this is Moore's 4th year, and he has battled injuries, and he is a big kid. But they saw that it eventually clicked with Taiwan Malone, who beat out Edric Houston eventually last year and kept the job, even though Edric Houston had more snaps. So it's still possible for Jason Moore. He's just such a big kid.
6'6", 303 is what they listed him at. That's pretty good size.
I think I've said it before here. He would have already been moved to the offensive line if this is like Jim Tressel or Urban Meyer, probably.
Yeah. I think 6'6" probably hurts him as far as leverage and different things like that. I don't know. I'm not sure what the holdup is there. Linebacker, if you told me it's going to be Peyton Pierce and the Wisconsin transfer Christian Allegro, I'd be okay with that. But Riley Pettyjohn is a young guy going into sophomore year that is kind of pushing real hard to play. And I don't know how James Laurinaitis is going to sort this out. And TJ Alford is also right there too as a sophomore coming back. I think you got 4 pretty good players there. Garrett Stover, to me, seems like a guy that's kind of lost in the mix. Eli Lee, I think he came back. Not sure where he fits in either. He'll be a redshirt freshman this year. But, Christian Allegro, they brought him in from Wisconsin. And obviously, James Laurinaitis, his position coach was Luke Fickle. And so I'm sure that they talked about that. And Fickle either placed him with James Laurinaitis or James Laurinaitis asked Luke Fickle, is this guy legit? And, it all checked out. So I'm interested to see how that shakes out this spring. I'm open to whatever you guys think because this is an apples to oranges comparison. You got Allegro's in his like his 4th or 5th year, played a ton of football, Whereas Alford and Pettyjohn, just starting to scratch the surface of what they can do. Pierce forced a fumble in the game against Miami and really feels like he's coming on, and everybody mentions him as going to be somebody, but 6'2", 223 doesn't strike a lot of fear, when you see that. And maybe he's bigger now, maybe he's in the 235 range. But I'm up for whatever you guys think about that.
Yeah, I think it's Peyton Pierce in the middle unless he gets beaten out. And he has experience as that third linebacker last year. He's had experience with the green dot. So like he's a guy that is reliable and that the coaches can rely on. Nobody else on this team has done much with the green dot in terms of the coach to player communication. Christian Allegro, I think Christian Allegro, Riley Pettyjohn, and Peyton Pierce are your top 3 snap guys at linebacker. And I think you'll see Pettyjohn and Allegro kind of combine to do some of what Arvell Reese did last year. And then you dash in some Quay Russo on the line of scrimmage perhaps as well. But Allegro did the line of scrimmage stuff that Arvell Reese did last year as well. And they're basically the same size. So like he's big enough to handle that. So I think it's those 3 guys. And then can TJ Alford become a 4th in there? We'll see. But they've done very well with just those. They have a threesome, back when it was Cody Simon, Tommy Eichenberg, and Steele Chambers. And then, then it moves to Simon and Styles and Reese. And then, Reese and Styles were the top 2, and Peyton Pierce was the third like guy last year. That third guy always becomes a starter the next year. And so that's why I think that's Peyton Pierce, unless, something amazing happens.
But of course, there's going to be the, people are going to be like, you got to play the next wave of guys. You got to play Alfred. You got to play Stover or whatever. You could look at mass exodus after this season or whatever. So you got to find that happy medium of where you've got your true starters out there enough in the most, high leverage situations, but you're not forgetting about the rest of your guys because, Lord knows we've seen times where there've been guys that would probably be in good shape to be, the guy next year at Ohio State who aren't around because they don't get the playing time. So, I think linebacker is going to be a strong position in terms of the numbers that they've got. And I like what they've got at the top of the room.
We can split out the corners and the safeties. They play 3 corners typically with 2, outside corners, I guess, and a slot corner who was Lorenzo Styles for the most part this past year. Jermaine Matthews is returning at one of the cornerback spots. You lose Davison Igbinosun, who was a 3-year starter at Ohio State. And I think it's going to be interesting to see where he ends up in the draft. He could go as high as the 2nd round, perhaps. I think I don't know, but I kind of view him more as a 3rd round guy. But because of the penalties and the holding, and they're gonna probably call that a little bit closer in the NFL than maybe they did even in college. Devin Sanchez at corner seems like he's an automatic to step right in and replace IGB. And then I think that they go for one of the 2 transfers that they brought in, Dominic Kelly from Georgia or Cam Calhoun at Alabama, to be the slot corner. And I don't know much about either one of them, if one or either of them started a bunch of games in the SEC. But if they got any kind of playing time in the SEC, then we know they're pretty good players. So that's what it seems like to me. I think Miles Lockhart was real as kind of an unheralded high school kid. Miles Lockhart was getting some buzz about him, it felt at times last year as well. Unfortunately, they lost Bryce West and Aaron Scott. Again, a situation where Tim Walton probably had them hitting him up for raises, and it's like, but you ain't getting no coke. It's kind of, I don't know, what happened, and they're both out the door. But unfortunate, to have 2 national top 100 high school kids, and they never made it at Ohio State. Both of them from Ohio. Ugh. I will defer to the group after that diatribe.
It's modern football. That's all I have to say. It's just going to be just how it works at this point. And
Cost of doing business.
And even if you do play, that doesn't necessarily mean that that's going to secure you that bag. And I'm not insinuating that either player was necessarily, completely bag driven, but you can be pro player empowerment and also hate the current system, and I think that's where I am. I like the idea of players getting compensated for what it is they do, but this current system is just a Travis mockery.
I think they brought in Earl Little to handle much of that nickelback spot, and I'll be interested to see who is there with them. I think Jay Timmons, who was the number one corner by rivals, played most of his career at safety and nickel, and so I'm wondering if he factors in there. But I do think Dominic Kelly fascinates me because he's the one young guy they brought in from the portal. So I think that means something. They see something there. So it wouldn't shock me if he's the third corner this year after having a freshman season where he played like 8 games and was in the 2 deep or so at Georgia. Cam Calhoun had 1 year as a starter, and that was at Utah, and he didn't really play much at Michigan and didn't really play much at Alabama. So I think you could see Jordan Thomas, one of the true freshmen, and Jay Timmons get into the 2 deep at either corner or in the slot. I'm still wondering what Deshaun Stewart is, redshirt freshman safety who was injured last year. Where do they see him? Is he a safety? Is he a nickel? Because it looks like they're doing something different with nickel this year, maybe going more of a safety type than a corner type, but maybe they'll have a couple of each.
Yep. I think you make a very good point there. And the way that Tim Walton and Matt Guerrieri work together, you can mix and match people and slide somebody from safety to slot corner pretty seamlessly, I think, within this defense. It's not a rigid type thing. Safety, you do have Jalen McLean back, who I thought by the end of the year was pretty good. You mentioned Little. I don't know if they view, as you said, they may view him more as a slot corner than as a true safety. They did bring in as well Terry Moore from Duke. I believe he had 70 tackles and 4 interceptions the year before. And was he out this past year with an ACL? Does that sound right? Yeah.
Got injured in the bowl game and missed the year.
Okay, I'm fuzzy on a lot of these guys, and I need to do my research here before we get to meet them in person, I suppose. But Leroy Roker is another guy, unheralded recruit who was getting some run late last season. I'm open to debate on all of that. I don't see Caleb Downs walking through that door, but then again, it's college football and you got to move on to the next guy. So we'll see what kind of safety play they get, I guess.
He's not walking through that door with that degenerative ACL.
Yeah, exactly. Hobbling through that door. There'll be people clamoring for Blaine Bradford because they'll see all those stars after his name and how he needs to be out there. But those are also probably the same people, too, that were just like absolutely beside themselves when Devin Sanchez was kind of going through his learning process and having to, learn on the job. So, I think that, I think Jalen McLean and Terry Moore are probably the guys that I would probably pencil in at the top on my guess at this point. Zero days of spring ball in at this point. But, Leroy Roker is somebody who certainly was out there getting some run in some of the more exotic packages for Ohio State. So, I'm not exactly going to sleep on him either.
Yeah, when Lorenzo Styles was injured and Jermaine Matthews was nickel, it was, Leroy Roker was the dime because he's basically the next guy in. I have high expectations for Terry Moore. Everybody's very, very excited about him last year. Expect All-American expectations at Duke. And I guess maybe there'll be some rust, but no reason not to expect big things. Like say the Will Allen 2003 after years of Mike Doss at Ohio State.
Specialists, we don't need to spend much time on that. Joe McGuire is back as the punter, it would appear. And then Connor Hawkins, they brought him in from Baylor. Did they bring in another kicker as well in the portal to also compete? And then Dalton Riggs, long snapper from Central Florida. I don't know. It seems like upgraded kicker. Joe McGuire, to me, everyone was up in arms about him. I thought he had a much better year this past year than he did the year before. Again, I don't think we need to spend much time on that if anybody really cares to comment about it, but I don't want to dump on Jaden Fielding too bad, but I guess, you can't avoid what you can't avoid.
Well, neither their kicker nor their punter necessarily had the biggest of legs. I don't think Ohio State necessarily values kicking it, punting it 60 yards and then trying to cover it. They seem to be content with trying to place it and get that. So, I understand what's there. And then I'm not even going to touch the Jaden Fielding conversation with the 10-foot pole. I'm pro player, and I'll get shouted down.
No, I agree. And they shouldn't be in the positions where they were at, where they were depending on him to win a football game for him either. So
I'm just glad Ohio State went and got a kicker who missed 4 kicks last year to replace a kicker who missed 4 kicks last year.
There you go.
Ouch, babe.
From 27 yards.
It's getting late, Mark. Let's.
I was going to say it's almost beer o'clock.
Beer o'clock for me. Kevin knows
that's the
where
nice
I'm
thing
headed.
about doing these shows at 4:00. We get right out of it, and it's Miller time.
He knows where I'm headed. I'm going to have a happy hour before tonight's Ohio State-Penn State game, which is now suddenly the biggest game of the year. But real quick on Lou Holtz, I'll throw in what a contorted legacy from Ohio originally. Coached with Woody Hayes for 1 season in 1968 when they win the national championship. And then he jumped off, I think, to William and Mary as the head coach or something like that. And Woody told him not to go, because you'd get lost down there at a smaller school. The one story he remembered was in the spring, it was pouring down rain at like 10 o'clock at night. And Woody called all the assistants and said, we got to get over to the facility and put the tarp down on the field. And he goes, the timing of this is weird. He always said it, here we are national champions. And it's so glamorous that we're out there at 11 o'clock at night, putting the tarp on the field so that we can practice the next day. But that's, he also, Woody asked him why O.J. Simpson ran for 80 yards for a touchdown in the Rose Bowl. And Lou, this had to be a joke, said, well, Coach, that's all he needed. So that was those were a couple of the anecdotes of that one great year. My God, that coaching staff with Mallory and Earl Bruce and all those guys across the board, a lot of them in the College Football Hall of Fame. So pretty amazing. And then Arkansas, Notre Dame, he plays Ohio State twice, loses to Ohio State, gets his revenge, goes to South Carolina, beats John Cooper 1 year, beats Jim Tressel the next year at South Carolina, and then ESPN forever. And finally, the Ryan Day antagonist, when he was really calling a spade, that Ohio State didn't have the physicality it needed. And then Ohio State had just enough physicality to beat Notre Dame by about a half inch with Chip Trayanum putting that ball across the goal line. And then Ryan Day, where's Lou Holtz now? Where's Lou Holtz now?
I should have been asking where the 11th player was on that defense.
Yeah. But that was, so many memories and so many different things. And the world has lost, a really good person, I think, in Lou Holtz. But that's my 2 cents on it.
Well, I'll say one note that he might be the single most important person in keeping alive we couldn't go for 3. He's the one that has told that story. And there's no evidence that Woody Hayes ever said it.
The 50-14 game,
Yeah, he may have created that.
It was 48, and instead of going to 49, it went to 50.
Gonna hang half 100 on him.
Oh, well. Hey, they got Bo Schembechler out of it. As my buddy would say, lose the battle, win the war. So there you go.
Definitely an all-time coach and character. I think winning a national championship in '88 solidified him. and helped the image. But just working too much with Mark May has also been a detriment. But hey, we're
Now,
we're not here
Mayday,
to
you
cast
stop that stuff,
but,
right there,
certainly
Mayday. You just stop.
a college football legend, and
That
in
late
many
night
aspects.
show with Mark May, Reese Davis, and Lou Holtz was a freaking hoot for about 5 or 6 years. I mean, you had to watch it because they covered it, soup to nuts in a half hour, and it was fabulous. I really, I mean, we'd say what we want about Mark May, but they always gave you, these are the 10 most important things you need to know that just happened today, and they were all over it. So,
Well, I could go a zillion directions, but we're running out of time, and I will bring up one. So, Steve, along that journey, let's include NC State and Minnesota as well.
yeah, he played him at Minnesota too. Yeah.
I remember a 1985 game against the Buckeyes at the Metrodome where Lou Holtz, in just trying to galvanize his program, his team, and show that, hey, we've arrived, we've shown up, we're ready to challenge the big boys, had his Gophers wearing a Rose Bowl patch against Ohio State in that game to just kind of, that was one of his angles. He was good at lifting the team up at the right time or knocking them down at the right time. And for that group, that's what they needed, Ricky Foggy and the crew. But the Buckeyes did escape 23-19, I believe, in that one. But yes, Lou Holtz, one of the great legends of the game that obviously, as Steve said, stayed relevant as a broadcaster after he finally hung him up at South Carolina. All right, Buckeyes Live right here, the voice of college football. Make it a point every Wednesday, 4 p.m. Eastern time. Tony Gerdeman, anything there at Buckeye Huddle, Buckeye Weekly that we need to know about?
Just going through some, actually, we just dropped a Buckeye Weekly yesterday, our Black Stripe draft, picking the 16 true freshmen, the first 16 true freshmen to lose their black stripes this year. We do it every year, and it goes in many different directions. And just doing some spring positional previews right now at BuckeyeHuddle.com that you can find.
Kevin.
Yeah, we talked about it before Tony showed up on the show. Once we get here into spring ball, have a little something to talk about, we'll get on board with the live show. So look for something maybe into next week, and we'll try to get back on a regular schedule. Want to thank everybody who's reached out to me privately just to check on how things are going, and I appreciate it, and I appreciate being part of the show.
Anything else, Steve?
Nope, just following my boys. Game at Penn State tonight after they beat Purdue on Sunday. If they beat Penn State, beat Indiana, I think they're in pretty good shape to make the NCAA tournament, but you can't assume anything with this group. They haven't had a bad loss really all season, so I would hate to see one against Penn State tonight, but Penn State just beat Iowa. And on Sunday, we'll get the seedings for the Big Ten tournament, and then, win one or two games there, one game there. You might be, in the field at that point. But the madness could include Ohio State this year as a rarity at this point. So baby steps. They're trying to put this thing back together, one little brick at a time, and we'll see if they can do it. And obviously I'll be out there. We don't know anything about our media availability yet. They're getting a new SID to replace Jerry Emig. And so we'll find out maybe a little bit more about our availability for this spring and what we're going to get to watch maybe here in the next week or two.
Dallas fans, surprisingly, I agree with you on 1993. Yakov, great question. We'll catch up with it next week. Buckeyes Live next Wednesday, hopefully 4 p.m. Eastern time. Hit the bell for the notifications to know when we go live, and we'll see you next time.